Tisha B'Av is the day of remembrance. And so what we would do is, well, the first time I experienced this, it was utterly transformative. So the counselors tell us to put on all our good duds, our best little Shabbat Sabbath clothes, and we gather around the flagpole, and we hold hands, and we're all quiet. We say a prayer, we sing a song, and then the counselors explain to us that we are going to walk along this candlelit path, and as we do, throughout the camp, we will pass a living museum. And in the living museum, there will be tableaus, counselors frozen in various postures depicting things. And I'm thinking, oh, this is camp. Camp is so much fun. They're just going to be fun things. So they tell us to be quiet. We hold hands and we start walking. We pass the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades. There's actual fake blood, beheadings. And we continue silently, remembering, as we pass every horrible thing that has ever befallen the Jewish people throughout time. Now, by the time we get to the Holocaust, which is the skinniest boy in camp, shirt off, hanging from a chain link fence, I am openly weeping, as are all the children behind me and in front. We proceed silently, remembering, as we pass the KKK, the execution of the Rosenbergs, leftist camp, if there's like one leftist in the house. And then the worst one was saved for the very end, and this was to be the biggest threat to the survival of the Jewish people. And in that one were 2 empty chairs. And above one was a sign that read, "Assimilation." And above the other, "Intermarriage." Did I mention guilt? Did I mention that? Because it worked. It totally worked. I felt the entire weight of my people on my back.
Hi everyone, it's Amy Saidman and this is the Speakeasy Storycast. I'm here in the SpeakeasyDC office with storytellers Travis Wright and David Halsey. In this episode, we'll feature a story that Travis performed twice for SpeakeasyDC. Once in January 2008 for the theme, "Oh No You Didn't," stories about getting called out, jacked up, and smacked down. And he was chosen to perform again in our first annual Top Shelf Best Stories of the Year in 2010. So sit back and enjoy the story, and we'll be back to talk with Travis afterwards. So, Travis, thank you for being in the studio today. We also have David Halsey, another storyteller who's going to help us with this interview. You want to say hi?
Hi, Travis.
So, I guess my first question is, your story ends on such a lovely note. It's sort of this, you know, the clouds part, the sky's open. You're like, I will never do this again, and you get really positive results out of making this new choice as a teacher. But I'm wondering, really, in reality, were you able to sustain this attitude? Did you find that, you know, you were able to really make some sort of impact and change in the way you taught and in the kids and then in the environment?
I hope so. I mean, I think the heartbreak of this story is that as I became committed to being a different kind of teacher and became less a part of the system, then I saw sort of more clearly all the other bad things that were happening to kids. And so it was very difficult to sort of sit in my classroom and to be trying to create a very different space for children, and then to look across the school and to see so many other horrible things continuing. And so it's actually the reason that I left teaching and went back to grad schools, because I didn't know enough to make the system better, and the system felt so much bigger than one classroom. So I think that's the sad part of the story, is that it still isn't good enough here in Washington, D.C.
You know, actually, you're such a natural. I mean, the fact that the first 2 stories you did, we immediately were like, those are awesome. Let's have it. You didn't take a class. You barely got coached the first time. Maybe not. I don't even know if we were doing coaching then.
I don't think there were. Yeah.
Yeah, so for people who don't know Speakeasy DC, we have seriously mandatory coaching, and now it's a rehearsal. You can't get on our stage without going, running your story with somebody. But back then, the first time Travis did his story, he just went up cold, and it was just so beautiful. And so you have a real knack for it, and I'm wondering if you have any tips of the trade or any thoughts that go through your head when you're putting these stories together.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing you have to have is a good story. I mean, I think you have to have an interesting life moment. And so, when people try to make a life moment a story, it starts to feel really contrived. And so I think the stories that have been most effective for me are ones that I haven't quite figured out yet, but they're these stories that I keep telling over and over again, trying to understand them. So I sort of try to choose something that I haven't quite figured out yet. And then in writing the story, crafting the story, I think I see it and then I just tell what I see. So I really try to think about what it felt like to be there, what I saw when I was there. And I just say it from beginning to end. I just tell the story that I see. I tell the story that I feel. And then I go back and I sort of try to move the pieces around so that the story makes more sense to other people. But I think that good stories don't need a lot of embellishment. I mean, I think the dialogue is often so rich. Sort of the one-liners in real life are so much more interesting than the one-liners that we can make up. So I think I try to just sort of find the 2 or 3 anchors in those stories that I can't possibly make up, and then sort of build the rest of the story around those.